This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, we are recording. It is 6:05, and this is the Lewis and Clark Only Woluski Planning Area Citizen Advisory Committee for March 25th, 2021. This is an electronic meeting, and our vice chair is Tiffany Hall.
Welcome, everybody. I guess I call to order, and let's get started.
Okay. Do you want to just do a quick round of introductions so everybody can see who's here?
I'm Tiffany Hall.
Jim Backus.
Matt O'Grady.
Julia Decker, Planning Manager.
Gail Hendrickson, Community Development Director.
And we have as a member of the public, Carol Johansson, who's invited to speak if she would like, and typically has not. So that's who we have with us so far this evening. Some other people may join us in a few minutes. So those are introductions. Let me just briefly report to you that the county has hired a transcription service to prepare the meeting summaries, and you will have a meeting summary, at least one, possibly two, in your next agenda packet. They have returned one to me that I'm looking at now. So anyway, we'll start having agenda summaries for you again at your April meeting. So that gets us through that portion of it. Tiffany, did you want to invite public comment and input?
Would anyone like to make any comments or inputs about anything? Is it anything that we will be discussing or shall be discussing?
You could put, if somebody present has something they want to make sure gets discussed this evening, they could do that. It could be just a good of the order, just anything that they wanted to provide. But if somebody wants to add something to the agenda or something like that, we could do that.
All right, I'm opening it up for public comment.
I hate land use planning.
Okay. It's not a surprise. He usually opens with that one.
Oh, I didn't understand what he said, so.
It's not important.
And we love you too, Jim.
That's true. Anything else from anyone? Okay, it doesn't sound like it. So I guess, Tiffany, if you want to move us on into the next section here.
All right, well, it looks like we are going to be doing a review of Goal 6 topics: air, water, and land resource quality. Overview of Goal 6 meeting tasks, review of existing policies, and identify new issues and policies.
Yes. So Gail actually was the person who put together this memo for you, and there was a lot of information in here. I don't know if everybody had time to read everything, but this is Goal 6 covers a lot of territory. It's but it really focuses on maintaining the quality of land and water and air. And we've had a whole lot of things going on in the last year or two with all the fires and everything, so that it's new issues are becoming more apparent to us as time goes by. So anyway, she touched a little bit on some of the partnerships that the county has, for example, with the Department of Environmental Quality, also with Clatsop Soil and Water Conservation District. She talked a little bit about trends, especially regarding drinking water and watershed protection, which you're seeing now, I know, as a recurring theme through Goal 5 and now into Goal 6. But also it was in Goal 4, so this one is a recurring theme throughout. Emissions, so they're talking about in the report here that Gail prepared from vehicles and industries, which has created attention. And so she had some interesting factoids here that I had not been particularly aware of. which is the governor's order that requires greenhouse gas emissions to be reduced by at least 45% below the 1990 emission levels by 2035, and by at least 80% below the 1990 emissions level by 2050. So I guess if the goals are not high, then there's not anything to shoot for, right? I mean, we might fall short, but that would be an extraordinary feat if we could do that. Then we talked about failing septic systems, and Clatsop County has a lot of them, and that is actually where we talk a lot with our partners at DEQ, and also with our on-site septic program, which is basically the local partner of DEQ. So we've got a few of these, especially out on the Clatsop Plains. So might be talking a little bit about this evening. Talked about noise and the impact on wildlife and birds, but also on humans. Even though we don't necessarily naturally notice it, we are impacted by noise as well. And then, of course, she had a bunch of additional reference materials that were for anyone who wanted to do any rabbit holing. And then we had the background report starting with this unbelievably grim picture of smoke from the wildfires at the Peter Iredale. So anyway, I don't know if you have anything in here that any of you particularly wanted to talk about. I did want to draw attention to let's see, on page 5, we have this graphic map that shows in purple areas where we have impaired assessments, that we have monitoring stations that are the little green dots, and then it shows areas of impairment of various types. And you'll see that the Columbia River is considered impaired. And then we have actually quite a lot out on the Clatsop Plains, but also the interior of the county where there really aren't a lot of people, where it's all, the F80 zoning. There's impairment there as well. And so I'm not sure if this is from this map, and maybe Gail can tell us, is this considered the water, or is this air quality, or?
No, this is the water.
Water quality? Okay. Well, this is frightening. And we have the algae blooms. And then the other thing I was going to draw your attention to is on page 7, with the quick facts about wasted food in the United States and the amount of energy that goes into creating food that no one eats. And despite the fact that we have spent all of this time on transportation and manufacture and production, and using 25% of the fresh water supply of the United States to produce food that is never eaten, we still have 1 in 7 persons living in the United States who are food insecure. So I thought that was staggering to me, and I just thought I'd mention that. Some other tables and graphs, and then we moved into Goal 6, air, water, and land resource quality, and our existing policies, many of which have been discussed under other goals so far, the ones that we were talking about earlier. Some of these are starting to probably repeat a little bit, especially the groundwater stuff. So I don't know how you want to look at this evening, if you want to go through these one by one, or if you want to just do a quick overview and recognize that you've already looked at a number of these. There are only 2 that are actually Lewis and Clark only Woluski goals and policies for you to look at. And then there were some examples of some things that people had mentioned or were recommending, and that's toward the end on table 3. So does the group have anything they want to discuss, anything they want to pull out? Did you want to go through these one by one? Please tell me your pleasure.
I think we should just go ahead and start from the top, and then we can go quickly through them or slow down where we need to.
Okay. If you want to just look at policy 1, the county shall encourage the maintenance of high quality of air, water, and land through the following actions. And then, of course, we've got this list of encouraging concentration of urban development and a few different things, cooperating with the state highway department, encouraging indigenous clean industries such as fishing, boat building, tourism, and forest products utilization. So anyway, previously you did look at this as part of Goal 5 groundwater resources discussion. And I believe that what you decided and what other committees have decided was to retain the policies and the sub-policies. I don't know if you're looking at it through a slightly different lens this evening, so I don't know if you have anything that you want to tweak or talk about with this.
What is the sub policy? Remove Marine Drive, Commercial Street, and replace with Highway 101.
Yeah, you know, that's a good question. I don't know. Oh, yeah, sub-policy C. So it says methods to reduce congestion and air pollution on Marine Drive, Commercial Street should be explored. And since Marine Drive and Commercial Street are within the incorporated area of Astoria, it made more sense to widen that horizon to areas that are actually in unincorporated Clatsop County. And I think that recommendation actually came from our Clatsop Plains Citizen Advisory Committee.
Okay. I just wanted to understand that. That makes sense. Okay. That looks fine with me.
Jim
I'm
or
good.
Pat?
I'm good with that also, yes.
I'm good with it. Looks like a bypass to me.
Yeah.
It looked like one 25 years ago too, but it never materialized. Okay, so looks like the staff recommendation is something the committee would like to encourage. So policy 2, the county planning department shall work with the Department of Environmental Quality to monitor and keep its environmental database current, including information on air quality, surface and groundwater quality, and land quality, including waste disposal and erosion problems. The staff recommendation here was to delete this. The data is actually collected by the state, and the data is readily available on the internet, so we actually go get it from the state. You had to looked at it previously, and to the best of staff's knowledge, this database was not created or maintained at the county level. We have just always gone to the state for it. So that staff's recommendation was just to delete it and continue to use the state's data.
Sounds good to me.
I agree. I agree with it also.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Pat and Jim. So policy 2, go with the staff recommendation. Policy 3, the cumulative effect of development on the county's environment should be monitored and, where appropriate, regulated. When evaluating proposals that would affect the quality of air, water, or land in the county, consideration should be given to the impact of other resources important to the county's economy, such as marine resource habitat and recreational and aesthetic resources important to the tourist industry. So again, you looked at it as part of Goal 5. Proposed development is reviewed for consistency with comp plan goals and policies always. And so that includes Goal 9, economic development policies, which is a goal that will be coming up here fairly soon. And we'll be probably doing quite a bit of work to that one. But the staff recommendation on this was to retain the policy. Any questions, discussion, ideas?
Just keep it at this point.
Okay, so I think that was Pat suggesting keeping it at this point, which is retaining the policy as staff recommended. Jim, Tiffany, either of you have any input?
No, I don't. I think it should be kept.
Okay.
I don't have any disagreement or agreement. I'm neutral.
Okay. 1 neutral, 2 retain. Okay. We can work with that. Let's see, policy 4. The county shall continue its efforts to find an acceptable regional solid waste disposal site or an acceptable alternative. Recycling, electricity generation. So again, looked at it in goal 5 with energy sources discussion. And we do have recycling available through Recology. And in 2020, the county opened the household hazardous waste facility and takes car batteries, fluorescent lights, and other hazardous materials. Sometimes of the year, I think we actually can take paint, for example. So anyway, the county has continued to work on that and expand that. Staff's recommendation here was to revise the policy to state that the county would continue to support, promote, and expand recycling opportunities. Any ideas on this one?
I like it.
No, looks good.
Keep it going.
Keep it going. Okay. The weather's nice and you guys want out of here, I can tell. Okay, so
There's a
policy
lot
5.
here.
Recovery of wood waste rather than slash burning should be encouraged as a means of reducing air and water pollution, improving the economy, and for producing energy. Staff was unsure what technologies at the time were envisioned for the recovery of wood waste. We really didn't know. Not sure if that was biomass and they were thinking about that at the time or what. Jim, do you have an idea, or Pat? Either of you gentlemen remember?
They, they were trying to do some biomass stuff in the area, and it turned out to be not practical, too labor intensive, and it they just never got around to doing it. There were two, I think Dean Larson and another outfit were both looking into it, but it wasn't economically feasible, so they kind of let it all go by the wayside.
Okay.
Yeah, at this point in time, Larson is picking up wood waste up there in the woods up there that has already been logged, et cetera, and piles. They're picking up piles out there and bringing them over to their facility at this point in time. How much percentage they're taking, I don't know, but I've seen it quite a few times.
Okay. So is this one where maybe the idea is that we go ahead and retain the policy looking forward? Because one of these days we may have technology that would be viable and useful?
I agree.
I agree.
Yep, go with it.
Okay, so we'll retain the policy for now. Let's see, policy 6. Upon completion of the Clatsop Plains groundwater study, the county shall reevaluate the Clatsop Plains community plan to determine whether existing policies and standards are adequate to protect water quality in the aquifer, lakes, and streams. Consideration shall be given to protection of the lakes from further degradation, eutrophication, and possible remedial actions to improve water quality. You probably remembered this one from before from Goal 5 because we all looked at it and said, what is eutrophication? And of course, now we know. So the recommendation, and this is actually picked up from the previous discussion, was to eliminate the first sentence and move the second sentence into the Clatsop Plains Community Plan. That was this group's recommendation. I think it was also the Clatsop Plains group recommendation, and Gail's nodding. So that was an idea that it would get moved into that plan instead. Any thoughts?
Nope, we already went over it, so yeah, go for it.
Okay.
Keep it.
Yeah, my only concern is Cullowby Lake and the other lakes around the area there with all the algae buildup, et cetera. I was going to bring this up later on in public comment. What about the septic around the lakes, et cetera? Are they being monitored, et cetera? These lakes are getting in really bad shape.
Yeah, that would be the eutrophication. So the Department of Environmental Quality is aware of the situation with the lakes, and there has been an ongoing effort to clean up a number of the septic systems. It's going to be an ongoing battle, I think. And Gail, it's Clatsop Plains, which has really been a little bit more your bailiwick. Did you want to talk about that at all, or?
I think Julia's pretty much touched on it. One of the things that the Board of Commissioners has put into their 2020 strategic plan is to start doing a water assessment on the Clatsop Plains, and that's the focus right now because that's where we're directing most of our residential growth. So I would look to see a water quantity and quality assessment. There has been some talk, although I don't think that it would be supported at the board level, but there's been some talk about a moratorium on septic tanks out there on properties that are less than an acre in size. And I think that pretty much sums it up.
Pat, that's probably kind of vague. Does that help answer your questions?
Yeah, I just want to make sure the county's kind of monitoring these lakes around the area. That the fish habitat's gone down the tube. The water skiing, the public use has gone down the tube in these lakes. And just be aware of it. We got Mother Nature affecting it also. So just so people are aware of what's going on. The lakes have been closed down a few times. So just be aware of it.
So
I guess my question is, once you've done this study, what's the plan? What is the big picture of what, once you've done the water studies? Are we just monitoring it, or is there some idea of wanting to do something?
I think what the initial goal is, and we are it's called phase 0 of the project right now, because first of all, the board has to approve the funding for it for the next fiscal year, so we don't have the funding in place. Then we would form an action committee that would basically review the work, any water quality studies that are available right now, and then from there hire a consultant to actually conduct our own water study based on our parameters and needs. And then once the study would be completed, I think the intent is to set up a monitoring program so that we constantly know where we are in our balance with being able to maintain water supply and making sure that we're not leaking sewage into sensitive environmental wetlands. And like Julia had mentioned, the county doesn't do that type of monitoring right now. We basically rely on DEQ. And while they have some monitoring stations set up at various locations, they're really not out there monitoring septic systems on any type of regular basis. It's usually when something reaches the point of failure that it comes to our attention.
So basically, I guess my question is, the one above that we said to strike it off because we're not monitoring it, are we basically doing this so that we can monitor it?
That's my understanding of what we want to do at this point. As I said, we're at phase 0 of this, and so once we get the funding and we put the action committee together, the action committee is going to be the one to actually flesh out what is in the strategic plan. Okay. And it's going to be based on whatever studies that are already out there, whatever data that we already know is out there, and that may lead them in a different direction. So I don't really have enough certainty right now, Tiffany, to tell you with any accuracy where we're going to end up as part of that strategic plan item, but I know kind of the general intent, which was discussed when we were putting the item in the plan.
So basically that one where we said let's take it out, should we leave that one in if that's like essentially going to be the possible down the road goal?
I would say that we don't know what that's going to look like if it becomes a goal. If that is what they determine they want to do, at that point, we would be able to amend the plan and add it but be very specific about what we're adding, I would think. What do you think about that?
Yeah, because right now we don't have that database.
Mm-hmm.
And if we do get to the point where we're going to do monitoring, I don't know that it's going to be county staff who's going to
Right.
be
It would
doing it.
probably still be state.
Possibly. And I just don't have enough information at this point, Tiffany, to really give you a clear answer or guidance on that one. It would
Okay.
not hurt to leave it in. I don't think it does any harm to take it out. And if we need to, we can always put a new policy back in that addresses our specific situation at that time.
That sounds better.
Okay.
That doesn't DEQ, they have oversight on all of this anyway, like Jeffers Gardens. They're gonna come in once the water quality is bad enough, they'll do like Jeffers Gardens did, and they'll require them to probably put in some kind of a sanitary sewer system of some sort. It's a little more difficult out there because they don't have, like the city of Astoria's to tap into, but there are a lot of smaller, like out at River Point and stuff like that. They have their own sewage treatment plants. And I would imagine that they're probably going to be doing that anyway. I don't know that it's up to the county to regulate it in any way. I think it's probably the DEQ's responsibility.
Yeah.
It is to some degree the county's responsibility to try and facilitate it if DEQ comes in and says this has become an emergency and we need you to facilitate a goal exception or something like that in order to be able to do the kind of work that was necessary in Miles Crossing Jeffers Garden, for example, so that we could have a sanitary district in the rural community, because typically that is not that's an urban level service, and it is not typically something that you find in a rural area. So there's a lot of work that goes into that. River Point is actually private, and they serve themselves, and also Cavalier Court apartment complex across the street, which is a multifamily unit. And then, of course, we've got Cullowhee Lake, which has the Sundown sanitary system. They were at the point of failure, and they now have an agreement with the city of Warrenton, and Warrenton is accepting the sewage from there. And so when these things occur, when we have to take a step like that, then the county needs to be able to facilitate making the goal exceptions and doing some of the heavy lifting to be able to let these communities do this work. But DEQ will let us know if they need that done.
So the county owns the Westport sanitation system, don't they, or do they?
I don't know if owning it is the correct
I
term. I
mean,
know
well,
the
they
county
operate, they
the
run it
public
and
works
operate it, I guess.
Public
Yeah,
Works Department operates it. They do the
right.
billing for it and all of that. I don't know exactly the whole ownership issue. That I don't know how that works, but I do know the county operates it.
Okay, so back to what we're talking about, doesn't that, do we, well, okay. I think, yeah, I agree, it probably should be changed, should be taken out.
And I would say on Westport too, the again, we've got a sanitary district, a public sanitary district. I know the county owns some of the property and some of the facility. But again, it's in a rural community where we have very specific goals and policies for that rural community, and goal exceptions that allow us to have that level of municipal service really in the rural community. We can't just go plop one down on the Clatsop Plains anywhere, I guess I should say.
Right. Yeah, I was just, how it referred to what we're talking about, taking out that portion of that policy.
Sure.
Yes, sure.
Okay, now I'm lost. I forgot what we were doing. Where are we?
Policy 6, I think.
Policy 6 still. Okay, so the staff's suggestion was to eliminate the first sentence about upon completion of the Clatsop Plains groundwater study, and then move the second sentence over to the Clatsop Plains Community Plan, stating consideration should be given to protection of the lakes from further degradation, specifically eutrophication, and possible remedial actions to improve water quality.
And again, I agree.
Yes.
Go with it.
Go with it. Okay, that was from Pat. Okay, very good. Policy 7. The county shall work to maintain the quality of its estuarine waters through participation in the regional Columbia River estuary planning process. And so the staff comment here is that county staff works very closely with the Columbia River Estuary Study Task Force staff, and the county participates in the Lower Columbia Solutions Group. And I don't see that changing. REST and the Lower Columbia Solutions Group are tremendous resources for the county. So staff's recommendation has been to retain the policy.
I
I
agree.
agree.
Go with it.
Okay, Pat says go with it also. Okay, policy 8. The county shall cooperate with DEQ, State Forestry Department, State Transportation Department, and other agencies in implementing best management practices to reduce non-point pollution. Staff's recommendation here was to retain the policy but update the names of the state agencies. In other words, State Forestry Department is now Oregon Department of Forestry. State Department of Transportation is so basically just update the names. So other than saying perhaps continue to cooperate, staff didn't have any other recommendations.
Can I just ask what non-point pollutant is?
Non-point pollution is pollution where you're not sure what its origin completely is. It may come from a variety of places, but you can't pin it down to one source.
Okay.
Runoff from a road is a good example.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Could be coming from all kinds of different directions, and as it gathers, it may become concentrated in one area, but it isn't just coming from one point.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
And I agree with it.
I agree.
Yep, that agrees.
Okay. All right. Very good. Policy 9. The county shall recommend that state agencies regulate the issuance of water rights so as to ensure that the total water rights of a stream bed do not exceed the minimum stream flow. And this policy you saw before in Goal 5. The county can only encourage or recommend. We can't, we can't enforce this. It's not in our jurisdiction. And currently we would be looking to the Water Resources Board. But anyway, we're suggesting that the policy come out because it's really not something that we can do. But it is something that the Water Resources Board does very well. The state does regulate that.
I would like to see that stay there just in case there's some issues that come up with that down the road.
Okay, so Pat, I'm sorry, I missed part of that. Could you say that again?
I would like to see that stay there just in case there's some issues that come down the road with this by chance. So the county's aware what's going on instead of being blindsided, so to speak.
Well, I'm not quite sure what the county or a private individual can do on that policy to start with, because it's up to the state regarding any banks of streams or any stream flow or any areas that can be removed or ponds that can be created. It's all up to the DSL. So I don't think the county has any real ability to enforce any of that or have any input.
Right. I can give you an example of something, and I won't name names, but something came up several years ago that we had a property owner who had water rights, and these are regulated by the state. The county does not have the authority to grant a water right. These are regulated by the state. So we had somebody who had authority to take a certain amount of water out of a stream, fish-bearing stream, and they transferred the property. They sold it to somebody else. The original water right was for residential purposes only, and it was a certain number of cubic feet per second, and there was a total amount, and it was really very, very specific. And I might add, it was like 35, 40 years old. It was an old water right. Anyway, they transferred it with the property to someone else, and that someone else decided that they didn't apparently realize the limitation on the water right, and they set up to do a commercial farm use and needed a lot more water. And there was nothing that the county could do about it except turn the situation over to the state water resources person, our water master for the region, and let her regulate it. I mean, we were aware of it because we saw it happening when the application came in, because one of the things we do is check to make sure that they had the sign off for what they were doing from the water resources person, and they did not check that. So then we checked it and said, oh, you need to talk to our water master for the region, who's down in Tillamook. So the state regulates it. We might catch something like that, for example, but we're not able to regulate it. We would turn it over to the state.
So I agree with what you want to do with it.
Yeah, I agree too. There's not much you can do.
My point is just to keep it there for awareness. So whatever way you want to go with that is fine with me.
Okay, so I'm kind of hearing a 2-1 split there. I mean, it's, just I guess we've got a difference of opinion. A couple of people are saying remove the policy. Another person would like to just have something there so that people are aware of it. Maybe we can come up with some language that kind of reflects that.
The county's going to cooperate with anything any other state agency wants to do anyway, irregardless. So I don't know why we have to have a written policy for it.
We're definitely going to be cooperating with the water master, with the state water board. Absolutely.
There's something new, a hung jury.
Well, it's actually 2-1, but I always like having a consensus.
You have more than 2-1. You got a couple of other people there that I see, Gail yourself. So I guess just overrule it and go with it.
I understand, Pat, but there's not really much the county can do.
Correct. I see that. I just wanted there for reference, basically. But if you want to get rid of it, go for it.
Okay. Well, let's take a look at number 10. Subdivisions adjacent to major arterials shall address the reduction of noise impacts in their site plans. Staff had said the recommendation here was to retain the policy. And so this is I do want to point out, this is specific to subdivisions. It's not like one lot development here and there. It's a subdivision. And so when the subdivision is designed, what this is suggesting is that the person doing the development, creating the subdivision, should be looking at ways to mitigate or reduce, like along Highway 101, for example, or any of the major arterials, the noise from traffic. So you might see dunes or berming or something like that. So anyway, the idea here was that would be a consideration when the subdivision is designed. So staff had recommended retaining that policy.
I have a little bit of heartburn over that one because I don't quite get what who is ever developing the subdivision can practically do about noise reduction off of a highway. And I'm kind of, I guess I'm kind of not understanding of why that's the responsibility of the developer.
Well, they do it in other communities where they put up barriers along major roadways, fences,
But
vegetation. But it's
usually this,
usually the State Department that does it and
right,
not the
right,
developer.
it's the opposite of what that statement says. So, I
Yeah, it's
mean,
usually the
I can understand shrubbery or something like that. That's going to be a condition of the subdivision, but to make it something that's really complex, like Julia's
dunes.
talking about with dunes and stuff. Now that to me is very expensive and pretty impractical. But yeah,
Well, like on Clatsop Plains, for example, the dunes are already there. So it's a
right.
matter of,
And,
you know,
and you won't allow them to be removed. That's part of the dune
right.
overlay.
And maybe
Right.
part of it too is if you've got to make a cut into a dune, you do it at such an angle so that the sound doesn't travel as much or something like that. What we also see, for example, down in South County is we have a 25-foot wide buffer of trees along the state highway where a buffer already exists, they're not allowed to remove it. There are variances to that for people who have lots that are shallow. But just the buffer of trees, for example, adds the noise buffering as well. And that's down from like Cannon Beach southward to the county line, for example. So anyway, it's just asking developers to consider those things when they are creating their subdivision plans.
I think that that the wording should be um, that if there is a natural that kind of wording should be in there, that it should be not that they have to create it, but that they should be using whatever is a buffer or whatever is naturally occurring there. Because I think to ask them to create something is, especially if that's something that the ODOT should be doing. I mean,
So
So
to retain natural barriers that are
yes,
already
yeah.
existing, rather than saying that it's up to the person making the subdivision to create that.
But to take advantage of the natural
Correct.
Sure.
buffering.
right. The other thing to keep in mind too is when State Department of Transportation puts in these sound barriers, it's usually because there was an older subdivision and the highway has actually gone in close proximity
But
to it.
yeah.
But when you're taking a brand new green field and converting it next to a highway into housing, it's the responsibility of the developer to attenuate that noise. It's not the responsibility of the Department of Transportation.
So
It's
that
sort of,
makes sense.
it's like
That
when you
makes
build
sense.
next to a farm or an airport, knowing that it's there. So
Except for it's already there, and why put the burden on the developer when we consistently talk about affordable housing and blah 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 when there is no such thing, and now you want to put more restrictions on the poor developer. You know,
well, the poor
like
developer will leave town after his development is finished, and then the residents who live in that poor development from the poor developer will come to the county to complain about the noise, and the county will say, well, it's not our road, go talk to the state. And then the people who live there will go to the state, and if the state does agree to put up a wall, who's going to pay for it? The taxpayers of the county.
Yeah. Yeah.
okay, affordable housing.
Well, also, this doesn't actually require somebody to do a specific thing. It doesn't say thou shalt put up a 4-foot, thick concrete barrier that baffles all noise. It just says you need to address the reduction of noise if it's going to impact your housing or your site. And it's residential. It's not something for commercial or industrial development. It regards residential development. But I would say that if you've created a development with eyes toward reducing sound and mitigating sound impacts, affordable housing or not, your development, your final product is more valuable.
I agree with that. I guess I don't have a problem with the noise reduction, or I just wanted to make sure that there is an understanding that, because I really liked what you said about like cutting the dunes so that a certain way. So do you guys, I know that this is real, I guess I just want to understand better what this wording is compared to what the policies are that when they come to you guys. So is this just a general statement, and then when they come to you, you guys talk a little bit more about, well, if you cut the dune this way, it'll like how do you do that part?
Well, this is a policy that allows us to have the conversation with a developer and says to them, hey, this is something that you need to consider, and what might you do? And every site is unique. So what works in one area might not work in another. Mostly where we see subdivisioning going on anymore is actually up on the plains. And so we are seeing vegetative buffers and the use of the natural dune area. I'm not aware of anybody doing like, a great big concrete wall or anything like you would see in the metro area or something like that. What we see are berms and buffers, and especially those that already exist, as they often do, that are left over from site prep and things like that, and then the vegetation on top of that. That's typically what we would see.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
I'll abstain.
Jim is abstaining. Okay, his feelings are hurt. All right, Pat?
I'll go with that. There should be some more wording in there to where the darn homeowner that purchased that property ought to use some common sense and be aware of what he's buying and not complain later to the county. I'm sorry.
There you go. I agree with
ridiculous.
that. Buy a house next to a highway, you're going to have some noise.
This is a true statement. This is a true statement. Okay.
Keep the county out of it.
Buyer beware.
Always.
Exactly.
Gail, don't look so mad.
She's laughing.
She is not.
She is.
Actually,
She wants control, damn it.
Oh, who doesn't? Let's see. Policy 11, performance standards for noise will be considered for inclusion as standards in the county's industrial commercial zones. So actually, we've already got those. Performance standards have been included. Staff recommendation here was revise the policy to state that the county will continue to enforce performance standards for noise that included in the industrial and commercial zones. And basically, I'm trying to remember what it says right now, but gosh, just basically, I mean, we've got hours of operation and vibration, and those types of things are standards where basically we're looking for the developer to tell us what they're going to produce, and so much of it is going in areas where there's already commercial or in light industrial development. So it's just we haven't had anybody put in, something truly outrageously loud where that's actually come up. We've done a couple of places where we've had light industrial. I consider cell towers to be kind of light industrial, and they've gone in next to areas where there were rural residential on resource lands, and the towers and the equipment that's on them really doesn't make a lot of noise, but we had some homeowners who were concerned, and so we did just require that the cell tower builder tell us, monitor the noise level at the property line, and that it wasn't supposed to exceed a certain number of decibels, which I think was 60, and nobody's ever had an issue with meeting that requirement. And 60 decibels is about the level of a normal conversation.
I agree with noise standards for the stuff. I would like to have something that's a little more consistent than it is now. Prime example is Jeffers Gardens, which is a weird mix of residential, commercial, and industrial. And I've personally been impacted by one commercial use can have all hours of operation, and then you get a conditional use for the next one that's 40 feet away that has a 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Hours of operation, which are totally impractical, but in order to actually get something to go through, you just kind of go along with it. So some consistency and stuff would be great, and not just ranting and raving, but
Okay.
yes.
So the staff recommendation here was revise the policy to state that the county would continue to enforce performance standards.
Sure.
And maybe it should say continue to enforce performance standards. Maybe we should also revise the policy to have clearer performance standards, or what's
Consistent.
consistent? Make the standards consistent and clear.
Or have zones, or I mean, is it zoned to where there is like one that could be 24 hours and then there's one that's 5 to 8? I mean, like, how is that set up?
Within 40 feet of each other. Within within 1 year of creation. That's where I have a problem. And I've talked to people about it, and I've talked to the planning department about it, and it's just kind of a hands up in the air thing.
So make the
And
standards clearer and
totally
consistent.
ridiculous.
Well, I think what's hard down in Jeffers Gardens, I don't know anything about it, but there's houses right next to industrial places.
Sure, but the houses are non-compliant use. I mean, if they get torn down or burned down, you can't put them back.
Yeah.
It's a flaw in the zoning that this department didn't do. I guess Julie was there. Julia might have been there when it all happened, but it's a ridiculous spot zoned mess of residential, commercial, and it probably makes everything really difficult. But
Yeah,
yeah, sure.
it's frustrating.
Yes, very.
It's kind of the poster child for why there should not be spot zoning. This is an example of the poster child example. And Jim is right. I was here for it. I was not a planner at the time. I did work in the department, so I was here for the festivities, all the public notices, all the public hearings, all the public testimony. And another planner who used to work here once told me that the sign of a good compromise was everybody was equally unhappy, and that is kind of what we ended up with. So
And you did.
and we did. So anyway, point taken. So if we say something in there, make the standards clearer and more consistent, an example would be hours of operation consistent throughout the zone, whether it's the RCC or the RCI. Does that capture it, Jim, Pat, and Tiffany?
I'm good with that.
Yeah.
Pat, I didn't hear you.
Yeah, go with it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. We're on to policy 12. District conservationists shall be used for technical evaluation of all development activities, including subdivisions and major partitions that could create erosion and sedimentation problems, with her recommendations incorporated into the planning approvals. And this is where we discovered that apparently the district conservationist referenced in this policy is the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service District conservationist, who is not anybody that we've contacted. We have been notifying the Clatsop Soil and Water Conservation District for partitions and subdivisions, but we have not been notifying USDA Natural Resources. So anyway, the recommendation here was to retain the policy, and staff would get on the stick and include the district conservationist on the public notices.
I agree.
I agree.
Sure.
Okay. All right. So we'll go with the staff recommendation on that. And then you are into the two policies for the that I was able to locate for the Lewis and Clark Olney-Woluski Community Plan. And one of these is out of the energy policy. And so this overlaps, this set of policy overlaps with Goal 6 and also Goal 10 housing, which you're going to consider later. But I did want to put it out here for you to consider it from the perspective of Goal 6. So we have changes to the rural service area boundary, which, by the way, is a rural community area, such as Miles Crossing Jeffers Garden, and other RSA-SFR type zones, like Cullowhee Lake, for example. And actually, we have something very similar. That the zoning is not the same, but it is the old Naval Hospital, which is now River Point. So those are the types of zoning that we're talking about here. Changes in the rural service area boundary shall be done only after the following factors are considered, and I pulled C, D, and E. The importance of an orderly and economic provision for public facilities and services, such as sewer, such as water, transportation. The desirability for maximum efficiency of land uses within and on the fringe of the existing developed areas. And E, environmental, energy, economic, and social consequences. So basically, all of those things should be considered before the boundary is allowed to be changed. And then 3, within the light industrial zone of the old Naval Hospital, standards shall be developed to prevent adverse impacts to the surrounding residential uses. Standards such as buffers between uses, limiting time of operation, and controls on noise levels should be used when the industrial uses are proposed for this area. So for anybody who doesn't remember, River Point used to be the old Naval Hospital, and it was zoned light industrial, and it now has a housing development on it. It's an overlay, basically, with the private sewer district. So staff was looking at number 3 as something that we can be deleting because it's already been redeveloped with housing, so it's not going to conflict, I would presume, with the housing next door. Let's see. So, and then retain 2, C, D, and E, just because those are things that are always going to be something that should be considered whenever we start looking at changing boundary areas.
So there's no longer a light industrial out there, is it? Hasn't it been changed to something different than that?
The zone has not been changed. That's,
Really?
yes, I know, it's really odd. The
Ah,
zone is still light industrial, but it has a planned unit development overlay, and
correct.
that is basically a subdivision overlaid onto this light
So,
industrial zoning. And it was an extraordinary feat. I did not
yeah,
work in the department when that was done, but I did
yeah,
work for the Economic Development Division when it was done, and Harry Henke did it, and it
yeah,
took
of
him
course.
years.
Yeah, well, how in the heck did that ever happen? But yeah, I agree with the statement, but why shouldn't the zone be changed to what it is now? I mean, it's all residential.
I
So, It's
don't
not,
know.
I get it, it's not that easy, but, okay, yeah, I agree with the state.
So is
So
the recommendation to remove number 3?
Let's go with it.
I mean, that what we were looking at, or what I was looking at when I wrote that, is it's redeveloped with housing. It's got a planned unit development on it of um, actually fairly nice neighborhood with a sanitary district and a bunch of waterfront homes. So it's not going to conflict with other housing. And so that was that recommendation, and then retaining 2, C, D, and E. So what's your pleasure?
I agree with it, should be eliminated. I'd love to have a conversation sometime how it happened, but that's not for here and now, and it's nothing to do with you because you didn't do it, but it's very interesting.
Okay.
I
There is,
agree. I agree, by the way.
okay. Pat, did you have a comment?
You know, let's just go with it.
Go with it? Okay. And Jim, someday if you want to come in and make an appointment, let me know, and I will haul out the boxes of material that have
No,
to do with that.
no, no, no. I got many other fights to fight than that one. That has nothing
Okay.
to do with me.
All right.
Bring him
Another
in. He
time.
needs something to do.
Yeah, just when you're bored. So then the other final one that I found for you was under conservation other resources, which you again had looked at previously under goal 5, wilderness and natural areas and open spaces, and also groundwater resources. And the previous CAC recommendations from you and others were to retain this policy. And all it is just now from this lens of uh, quality habitat is the county shall encourage the identification, conservation, and protection of watersheds, fish and wildlife habitats, the areas of historical, cultural, and/or scientific importance. Forestry, recreational, and associated activities may be reviewed and restricted when such activities are found to be in conflict with the conservation and protection of such areas.
I agree with that one.
Okay.
I agree.
I agree also.
Okay. All right. So that gets you through the existing policies. If we move on to the final worksheet, issues to be addressed, these are the ones that staff picked out. I think a lot of this was Gail. But you're looking at all of them there on one sheet. So the issues to be addressed. I'm sorry, please go ahead, Tiffany.
Oh, no, you're fine. I just rotated my phone.
Oh, okay. So clean water, state revolving fund, and failing septic systems, and lack of sufficient funding availability for low interest or zero interest loans to repair or replace systems. Issue to be addressed is that we've got failing septic systems all over the place. A lot of them are in the Clatsop Plains, but they're elsewhere as well. So the proposed solution was the county would continue to work with state legislators to increase funding for the Clean Water State Revolving Fund to be used for below market loan rates to assist low-income property owners to repair or replace failing septic systems.
I agree with that.
Because the septic systems are horrifyingly expensive to deal with.
Yes, they are.
And
Make it equal for everybody.
there's more than you know that are failing. People don't even know they're failing.
Sometimes they don't know it until all of a sudden they have a yard full of septic.
Because nobody ever pumps their systems and nobody ever does any maintenance on them. They think that they're just there.
Well, we certainly see it in a number of code compliance situations that our code compliance specialists deal with, because we find people who have septic systems that are failed or failing, and the specialists are working with these people to try and find a way to help them bring these systems into compliance. And it's a real problem. I mean, it's a terrible health issue. So anyway, that was a recommendation from staff. Do you all have anything that you might like to add or change or tweak or?
I like that. I just listened to a podcast last week about in the South where people were going to prison because they couldn't maintain a healthy septic system, so they were going to jail.
Oh
And I'm
my.
like, oh, please let's not do that here.
Agree.
So the fact that you're going to be offering loans for low income, I really like that.
I think this is the state's revolving loan fund. Yeah, it is. So this is, the state has a fund, so we'd be continuing to work with them to increase the funding and also try and steer people in the county toward that funding.
Yeah, and that funding is typically funneled from the state through Craft 3, and Craft 3 is the organization that actually makes the loan. So the county is not involved in it directly, but for example, I think there's a bill in the legislature this year that would increase funding for the revolving loan fund. And so through things like lobbying or letters of support, we would want to encourage that type of increase in funding.
Great. I like that.
I agree.
So that,
Okay, so one down. Next one. Smoke from wildfires and toxic chemicals released during wildfires can pollute and poison drinking water. We need protecting water resources during emergencies. So yeah, we've actually had situations here, but we had it elsewhere around the state that I was noticing it, and that is water sources during fires actually became toxic themselves, and it isn't just during fires either. It can be other types of events. For example, I remember in the 1996 we had a really major flood event in the county, and that was when the bridge to Shinima washed out, and a whole bunch of the little water districts around the county, their watersheds and their water plants became overrun. And so during the storm event that was going on, people were continuing to pull water, but the water was toxic and they didn't know it. So anyway, we were looking at the possibility for the county, in conjunction with the public health department and whatever state agencies are appropriate, to work to increase public awareness of the indirect hazards of wildfire. And that could include the impacts from air and water pollution and subsequent increase in landsliding and flood risks, because we saw that in a whole bunch of the rural water districts. We ended up with a FEMA grant, I don't remember how many hundreds of thousands of dollars, just to clean up water plants in some of the rural areas. Actually, I guess there's a couple of other elements to that. We have smoke from wildfires increases air pollution, so that as well. I think the county has tried to release media releases telling people what the air hazard is, that the quality is poor. And then wildfires destroy ground cover and vegetation, which can increase the risk of landslides and floods during the wet seasons or periods of heavy rain. And yeah, we've certainly seen that as well. So anyway, those were issues to be addressed. We had the solution over there is kind of increase public awareness. Do you guys have any other ideas, or do you think that these are issues, or anything to add? Or
There are definitely issues, but I agree with the staff recommendations.
Yeah.
so staff recommendation.
okay. Okie doke. Let's see. Need additional solid waste disposal site for septage that is not being accepted by the city of Warrenton. And so if you guys are not aware of this, certainly I don't blame you. The idea was that the county would work with private landowners to identify a future site or sites for the installation of a solid waste disposal site to accommodate a biodigester or other system for the temporary treatment and or storage of septage. Right at the moment, we have septic pumpers who have to travel out of the county to get rid of the septage that they have pumped. And the city of Warrenton, which had been taking it, is not necessarily taking it now. So it's kind of creating it's creating an issue. And so we've got one of the problems with people getting, we're up here above, we're saying that people need to get their septic tanks taken care of, and they need to have them pumped. Down here, we've got this problem where we actually have pumpers who don't really have a way to get rid of the septage. So anyway, we were talking about working with private landowners or trying to identify a site where we could do something for solid waste disposal or some sort of treatment.
That's a great idea, except the city of Seaside that you're aware of that does it up on Lewis and Clark, they tried to expand that and were met with every bit of opposition you could possibly be met with. And unless the government is going to grow something, uh, we're going to have total opposition to it, and nobody's going to allow it to get done unless the public agencies are going to actually have enough wherewithal to go ahead and do it. Get what I'm saying?
Possibly. Well, I'm thinking that you're almost looking at an eminent domain type situation or something, which is
Yeah,
not.
well, like I say, it's just like the Lewis and Clark main line. We're going to have every stinking person in the world complaining about anything that's going on next to their property. And as I said, the city of Seaside already does it up off the Lewis and Clark main line. They wanted to do it down below on Burkhart's property and everything else, and it was met by horrible opposition 10 years ago. So it's a great thought, except for the only way it's going to ever happen is in a rural forested area or something like that, where it's going to be outside and out of mind to anybody. But then you're talking logistics and trees and everything else. The only practical places to do it are, which are allowed under the DEQ rules, are to be spread onto existing farm fields, which again, everybody in the world will object to. And I understood that the city of Astoria still takes all the affluents from the septic providers that they want. It's just very expensive to do, but I could be wrong on that portion.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. About the city of Astoria. I think probably what we're looking at here is, I mean, I cannot see the county ever pursuing eminent domain for anything like this. That is, that is not something that.
That was you, not me.
No, I realize that I said that word because I thought that's where you were headed, and I cannot see the county ever pursuing
Not at
something
all.
like that at all, ever. But what this goal would do is tell us that this is something that we should be looking at. I mean, identifying a site, and if it's a goal and we start working toward it, maybe we'll figure something out. If we don't try, we certainly won't.
I agree totally, and I have lots of places I'd love to have you do it.
We will bear that in mind.
Sure.
Can somebody look into the city of Warrenton to set
I'm
up
sorry,
for
Pat.
that? But
Pat, I can't hear you. You're cutting out. Could you repeat that?
can somebody look into allowing the city of Warrenton to take that sewage disposal again? Possibly, they're all set up for it.
They've been refusing it.
I understand that, but why? There's a new regime there, and they may change their mind if it's looked into again, possibly.
Yeah, I think part of it is a capacity issue, Pat, and they're just nearing their capacity. And
I
then
was wondering about that.
some of the the waste that they were getting was included things like stuff that you would collect from the grease traps in restaurants, and causing problems with the plant operations itself, and it's not what they're set up to take under their DEQ permits. So it was causing a lot of problems, but they are nearing capacity.
Okay,
So,
all right.
so I also believe it's the smoke mass, which is created by the plants that have to be cleaned out, that like Seaside does, and they go out and spread their basically what it is it looks like a consistency of sand once it's dried out, and they spread it on out into the fields, and everybody misconceives it as somebody dumping poop and everything else right in the middle of everywhere, when it's actually a very uh, refined material. And I think that's what is happening. They're running out of places to put that stuff, I believe. Isn't that right? Or is it not right?
It sounds like that could be right. I mean, there's certainly public perception.
Anyway, I agree totally with what they're saying.
So you like the concept, even though you don't think it's going to work, basically.
No, I know. I think it totally will work. I just don't think that the public will allow it.
Okay. Pat or Tiffany?
Oh, I think you could probably get the public to buy anything if you spin it correctly.
Want to bet?
I said you have to spin it the right way.
I would just move forward with it, keep it going.
Okay, keep it going. Okay. Oh, this one should be near and dear to Mr. Nikas's heart. Need organic waste or fill disposal sites, that's an issue to be addressed. And on this one, the suggested language was something along the lines of Clatsop County will work with private landowners to identify sites for stockpiling and disposal of organic fill or waste that has been removed from other development sites.
Absolutely what I was talking about the last meeting.
It is.
And I agree.
You're still supporting it. Excellent.
Move forward with it.
Moving forward with it, says Pat. Tiffany?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. We have unanimity. Just a couple more here. Uncoordinated stormwater treatment does not meet statewide planning goal 6 requirements for cumulative evaluation impacts. So the suggestion here was to establish a comprehensive set of development standards for stormwater management, considering specific standards for residential, commercial, industrial, and other categories of uses. So basically devise something that is comprehensive and consistent. Anybody have any comments or suggestions or knowledge to
I,
impart?
I agree with it.
Okay.
I support the staff there.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, last issue, the quality of life issues associated with changes to work patterns and impacts from home occupations. And so what we're finding, I guess that my examples would be that a lot of people are finding that they want to do their business or their work, and sometimes it's not just like a home office, but there's more to it than that, and they want to do it as a home occupation, and we don't really have good noise standards established for home occupations. And so I'm thinking here of a situation where you might have somebody who is doing woodworking or cabinet making or something like that. They're using machinery. Or we've also had situations where we have people who have the general public who are taking classes or something like that and come into to a site that's actually in a residential neighborhood. So we're looking at noise standards, maybe hours of operation were some things that, would work with that. Do you all have any input or any ideas regarding this?
I think you should probably adopt the same as the industrial and commercial zones that talk about vibrations, talk about hours of operations, talk about lighting, talk about everything else you guys talk about.
Okay. And I think we do kind of go to those, but they aren't actually in the home occupational section of the code. But you're suggesting maybe we should move those so that they're covering there as well.
Make some standards better for home occupation, so that way you don't have variabilities when it comes to different neighborhoods, or, well, depending on the neighborhoods, yes, but like you don't have one neighbor at one end of the street getting different information from somebody else.
Sure.
There,
Some consistency.
and like you say, you end up with somebody, and it has been done in this area where you have a body shop in a rural area, or you have a automotive repair in a rural area that need to obviously have at least hours of operations and, the vibration, the same standards, the noise and vibration.
I will
Hours of
tell you,
operation. Sorry.
I'm sorry, Pat, go ahead.
Hours of operation, basically.
Yeah. I will tell you that automotive repair or body work are explicitly not permitted as home occupations. It's actually part of the standard. It's just actually spelled out. It is not permitted. But it doesn't say anything about cabinetry or stuff that would require using a belt sander or something for hours on end.
Okay. I could argue with that, but I'll go ahead. I
You
agree.
could argue with anything.
Sure I could, because it happens. You have them going all the time around this county. You have automotive and paint repair, automotive repairs, and everything else that are allowed in rural. You have zip lines. You have all sorts of weird things that aren't addressed and aren't allowed in home occupations, and the amount of percentages, but they're still all allowed. So that's going down the rabbit hole. But yeah, I agree with what you're doing. Yes.
Okay. Pat or Tiffany?
I should just put a dyno in my shop here at home. You can hear the noise.
Yeah, but you're not doing this as a commercial business, as a home occupation. That's just your personal use. That's different.
That's true.
Yeah, get rid of Pat's Dino. Sorry, Pat. Just kidding.
You'll buy me one, okay?
Did you guys have any other issues or policy concerns, things that we did not add that you, as we're reading through this, can think of some things that maybe should be added that are not here already?
I did have a question about the what I know this kind of reminds me of the issue of the wood selling in Warrenton, with people like selling wood. Is that kind of what this is referring to?
Well, people do wood sales from their homes, do like wood cutting and things like that from their homes, and sell from their homes. So that, that is a home occupation. We have some of those around the county. Um, that's actually also something you can do in the general commercial and the rural community commercial zones.
That was just one thing, and because I remember reading something about that and how somebody was trying to shut that down.
So I didn't know if that had something to do with this or if that was something else.
Well, if it's something, if you're asking about something inside the city of Warrenton, that would not be the county's jurisdiction. So these goals and policies would not actually apply to it if it were inside the city's city limits or urban growth boundary.
I heard it was like with the county right away is what was the issue
on Ridge Road.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was actually a commercial use that wasn't on somebody's private property. He owned the property adjacent to the road, but he had, I think he had a permit through the county to put up his wood stand in the right of way. But then he was supposed to be taking things in at the end of the day, and he wasn't doing that, and the sign stayed out, and the pile of wood got bigger, and then there were people parking, and then it became a complaint issue that actually came to us, and then we had to go out and explain to the gentleman the limits of his permit, and it was a much bigger issue because it was obviously at the Board of Commissioners, and there's a moratorium now, and now they're trying to draft an ordinance that can more clearly detail what can be put in the right of way in terms of flower stands or vegetable stands, wood selling, those types of things.
Okay. When are they going to be discussing that? Or have they?
It's been an ongoing discussion. The moratorium went into effect sometime in the fall, and at their meeting last night, they had a discussion at the work session. They did a first reading, I think back on March 10th, that would have just eliminated all commercial uses in the right of way. And then there were concerns raised by residents about could they still have their vegetable stand or their flower stands. So that caused another round of discussion between staff and the board members and the public, which happened last night. And so on April 14th, we'll be bringing changes back to the board that would probably allow flower stands and vegetable stands, but put a size limit on them, probably about 120 square feet at the most.
Okay. I was like, please don't get rid of that stuff. That's part of our county.
Yeah, and then the board heard a lot from the residents who had the same concerns, and that's why they're looking to make the changes so people can continue to do that.
Okay. All right. Sorry about the tangent.
No worries.
I like it. I love my tangents. So, I agree with the statement the way it is.
Well, if you don't have any new issues or policies to identify, you could return to your public comment and input.
All right. Any public comment or input? I guess that last I would had some public comment and input.
I hate planning.
You hate planning. Duly noted.
This is Pat. I do have a couple of items here.
Sure.
I did check on Youngs River Falls there, and the city of Astoria owns from the road down. The county does not. So I guess my question is, why is the county taking care of the park when the city of Astoria owns that?
They do?
Yes, they do.
I think the county owns it.
No, I just did a GPS on it last week, and the city owns from the road down, water in the falls there.
Get your wet mouths out, guys. Everybody get them out. I don't think so. I think it's county ownership.
I thought it was some sort of split ownership, but I don't know.
Yeah.
The other item I'd like to see is
the falls themselves might be owned by Greenwood and the city of Astoria, but I believe where the park area is itself is a county ownership. But I could be wrong because I don't have web maps in front of me.
Well, I did an updated map on that system, and it is from the road down where the city of Astoria owns that. the whole park area there. Anyway, next item is there any way the county can intervene with the city of Astoria and Youngs River Water District to possibly tap into Youngs River water when the city of Astoria will not need or never need at this point in time to tap into that water system there. The Youngs River Water District has to go out 5 miles for pipe to get any new existing water whatsoever. So they've got a pipe right there by the road that can go right down into Youngs River Falls. So thought I'd throw that out there.
Again, I have a little bit of knowledge of this. It's the city of Astoria that's putting the brakes and is not cooperative on any type of use of their water rights and their cubic feet of water. It was an issue a dozen years ago, and we were arguing the point, and the last I knew that the state of Oregon was gonna get involved and do something about that, but I don't know, or I'm pretty sure it probably didn't ever happen because the issue went away. But the city of Astoria has the cubic feet of water. They're the ones who have the say, and there's nothing you can do about it until somebody changes something at the state level.
Yeah, I agree with that, but it can happen and it just needs to move forward. Getting a pipeline 5 miles out there to another water system there to take care of the water at Lewis and Clark and Youngs River is very expensive.
I agree totally. Like I say, I was involved in this argument years ago.
All right. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I guess no other input. Do you want to review the next meeting date and time?
I have that as April 22nd at 6 p.m.
Okay.
Sure.
Let me just. Sorry, I have a dog nudging me,
Ah,
trying to get my attention.
That's what all the noises are.
The dog wants attention.
I knew it was either a dog or a child.
Okay, so yeah. Okay, so the 22nd at 6. All right.
yes, April 22nd at 6. That's folks, that's all I've got for you this evening.
Okay, somebody gonna shut her down?
Thanks for coming, everybody.
Okay.
Everybody have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Still 8:20.
I think you have to hit the